Well, I'm very pleased to welcome back to the studio Roy Snell, and we're going to continue the discussion about his book, The Accidental Compliance Professional. So, Roy, in part two of our interview, let's talk about how we can help the compliance generalist. And let's start with your chapter. These are great chapter titles. Fill every hole the rats can get through. Now, spending my entire former career in the armor industry, you said, let's put leadership in a bulletproof vest.
Yes.
So, Roy, let's start from there. Bulletproof vests, rats. What's any of this have to do with compliance?
I got a little creative, and I had a wonderful editor named Karen Kenny who helped me with some of these titles, and she would pull sentences out and use them as part of the titles. They got very good. One thing I want to say before I start is I just got an email before I got here from a woman who's using the book to train her staff, and she is. We asked her to tell us what lesson she liked the most, and she mentioned fill every hole the rats might get through.
Okay.
And I'm always curious as to which one, because some of them I thought I did get a little eccentric about. But to answer your question, the bulletproof vest thing is, I have great respect for people who pay me money,
Right.
and pay my benefits and hire me to do something, particularly the job of a compliance officer, because they don't even know how badly they need it.
Right.
Just ask John Stumpf from Wells Fargo,
Right.
who lost his career because he got poor advice, in my opinion. The chief medical officer of Sloan Kettering just lost his job
Right.
over what I would consider a relatively trivial issue. By the way, it was over conflict of interest.
That was a conflict issue, yeah.
And I believe conflicts of interest are going to be one of the very next big things in compliance.
Yeah.
People want to get ahead of something. I would look at that.
Yeah.
What I meant by filling the hole that every rat might get through, I didn't mean what it sounds like, which is calling people rats or whatever that might cheat. What I meant is that if you want to prevent a problem, you want to do education. One thing you could do is education. And some people say, well, I'll do an hour education with all the people and check that box.
Right.
Myself, I would attack it 12 different ways. I would send emails, put posters in the lunchroom. I would do an audio conference that was maybe elective. I would try and get a video with the CEO or whatever. I would teach 12 different ways
Right.
that one audience, the things they needed to hear. So the whole is the lack of knowledge, and the rat and that metaphor is the mistake that might happen because the people didn't get it. You got to apply it to anything.
Yeah.
You could apply it to investigations. You could apply it to auditing. I just get frustrated when a group of bright people sit in a room and think of 12 good ideas to get something done. And then they'll inevitably say, which two should we do?
Right.
And I'll look at them and I'll say, why not all of them?
Yeah.
Now, people say, well, there's not enough time and resources. I think people need to better manage their time. I tend to pick a few things and beat them to death.
Right.
And not do a little bit on everything. I think doing a little bit with everything, you don't get too deep and it's not terribly effective. I would rather do a risk assessment of what things my compliance program could do to be the most effective and beat to death some top issues. And so that's kind of what I meant by plug every hole the rat might get through.
Well, it's not a one-size-fits-all challenge or solution. And I think different people learn and get inspired different ways.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah, I actually did. I have a master's degree, and Health and Human Services Administration. Not many people know this. Again, something that has little to do with where I'm at now, but my career has wandered aimlessly. But I did using visual information to teach adult learners. It's kind of what the whole book is about. I learn best by trial and error.
Right.
And I learned a lot because I was extremely successful at error. And I'm sorry, if you talk to me didactically through a lecture or have me read a book, I struggle. I literally struggle to convert that into something that I can take with me and learn from. And there are other people like that. On the other hand, there are people, if you print 5 pages and hand it out to everybody, if 10% of them read it, great. That's the way they learn. The audio conference, that's the way they learn. Think about doing what you do and attacking it many different ways as opposed to one way.
No magic bullet here. Excellent.
All my answers tend to be no super trick, just lots of hard work.
Absolutely. So I'd like to talk about one of my favorite chapters, and that was Victoria and the Falsified Logs. You describe a story where Victoria, who's someone who worked in healthcare, falsified a requirement to wash patient toys a certain amount of times per day, a frequency which she thought was ridiculous, right? Now, your Victoria story reminded me of me in my former sales days, where I thought of processes and procedures as slowing me down and inhibiting my success. Like Victoria, I thought of regulations as inconvenient and not there to protect me and my colleagues and my company. So Roy, and I know this is a complex and broad question, how do we best help our Victorias and our Richards? Because as you well share, when regulations are circumvented, it ends up in monumental trouble, quote unquote, for everyone.
There's a couple of key things. One is you got to get them to respect the idea that their actions could result in a serious problem for them, obviously others, but focusing on them for the moment. What she's not equating to is that 1 in a million chance that a kid with an illness, contagious illness, could play with the toys and infect a bunch of other kids, maybe one with a complicating factor that they might die.
She didn't understand the why of that
She
regulation.
didn't understand the why, and I would explain her to the why, and then she would roll her eyes at me and say, the odds are very slim. And I would say, you're right, but you have to consider 2 factors in risk, the odds of it happening and what the consequences are. If the odds are low and the consequences are meaningless, go ahead and roll your eyes. But in this case, their infections in hospitals are very frequent, and some horrible event could occur, and you have to do the math. Yes, low odds, but huge risk. And the second thing I would do is sit down with her and say, whether I get through to you or not, we're going to find a solution for you together. And I would do a quick search on the internet, possibly call somebody in another healthcare system and say, how do you do this? It's obviously a pain in the neck. Nobody wants to do it. Is there an easier way? And you know what? If you just pin them down for a few minutes, most people will work with the compliance professional to solve their problem. They'll come up with their own answer. I once jokingly said or put on Twitter or something, we're not the Department of No, we're the Department of No, K-N-O-W. And so in that case, I think it's a good example. Rather than just saying, Victoria, I'm going to put a letter in your file and you've screwed up and see you later, I'd first trying to convince her of the risk to herself and the children. And then secondly, I would say, let's find a way.
See, that's a great point, because the problem with shortcuts is they work. for the person that circumvents.
Correct.
They don't understand, though, the potential peril they're creating for the rest of the organization, to the people that are impacted by their decisions.
Here's the irony. Some kid was materially harmed by contaminated toys somewhere in the country, or that it wasn't really a regulation, it was a policy of a group called the Joint Commission. Joint Commission is a certification body. If you don't get certified, you can't build a government. It's kind of important. It might as well be a law. You got to follow it. But they saw somewhere somebody harmed. And somebody was harmed. Some individual harmed them, and they were harmed for life by the discipline. And so they said, well, let's just learn from this and tell everybody to clean the toys a reasonable number of times.
But you brought up a great point, and I think that compliance and business leadership miss this, is that when we have a bottleneck, that when we surface it, instead of circumventing it, as you shared, you know what, we might be able to improve our processes across the board for everyone's benefit, because you raised a problem for the entire organization.
It is entirely possible that the solution to her problem might even be that would be compliant with this particular policy, might be a better solution than the workaround she did. Right. We need to think about this as compliance professionals, that at times we're some sort of just make people think a little bit longer, right? Is don't just grab the quick first thing that runs through your mind to work around a problem. Spend some time thinking about the 6 different solutions, 3 of which might be actually legal.
You remind me of a story, and I just thought of it now. When I first moved to Florida, I think it was 1994, and there's the Intercoastal Road, which I think it had a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, which growing up in Long Island, we didn't see those kind of speed limits. And I'm racing down that road. I get pulled over by a police officer for speeding. He just could have wrote me the ticket, okay? But he saw that I just moved to the area, and he said, look, there are children that are darting back and forth across this street from home to home. I don't want to be the one to go to a parent to say something happened to their child, and you don't want to be the one to do it. And that was all I needed to know about that road.
And by the way, I've had plenty enough experiences both watching on television and myself, that those people who have those kinds of jobs, who embrace them as we should embrace our compliance jobs, really impress me. Think about what he did there.
Oh, yeah.
He influenced as opposed to disciplined. Did you get a ticket?
I think he gave me a warning.
It could have done either, but the point was he also influenced. We sit and watch stuff like that as compliance professionals and say, how impressive was that? And then we got to think, oh yeah, I have that same opportunity to do that for the people I serve.
All the time.
All the time.
So now let's talk about something that's really difficult. What about organizations that look the other way at shortcuts? So I'm talking about maybe shipping products at the end of a quarter to a client or customer that doesn't really need them. We often call that distribution or channel stuffing, or some other accounting maneuver to sort of get over the line and make your fiscal goal to make that objective. Now, Roy, when I address business leaders and I talk about these issues, these are when the eyes go to the floor.
Yeah.
Okay. But we know it takes 2 villages to do something like that. The support functions that engage in it, sales, finance, sales order processing, shipping and receiving, and their even bigger village that's looking the other way. Now, Roy, this is a dilemma that I see confronting compliance leaders on a consistent basis, where these activities are, for lack of a better word, untouchable.
Yes.
This is messing with the business, messing with our numbers. So how can we help compliance leaders address such conduct? Because I think these little shortcuts, these accounting maneuvers, send a huge, loud yet unspoken message to the entire organization that worst case scenario, you can take a shortcut to meet your objectives. How can we help someone who's in an organization where that's untouchable?
Well, again, this is where if you want to sort out the top 10% of compliance professionals from the others, is those that are good at influence.
Okay.
And again, this is difficult because the answer is a lot of hard work.
And you're going up against the business here.
And you're going to negatively affect the numbers.
Right.
And by the way, I would first check to see if there's another workaround to this. I know it sounds ridiculous in this particular example. That might be appropriate. But assuming there is no way around this that would allow them to achieve their goals and allow the organization to stay on the right side of ethics and the rule of law, sadly, I don't think there's a magic bullet here. It's a lot of time and influence and chatting with the people and working with the people, not running up and down the hall with your hair on fire, but working with them closely. And one of the things that dawned on me is going to get examples of others who's run into this trouble and get the articles and find the people who are identified as the culprits, if you will, and that were disciplined, fired, maybe jailed, fined, and bring those stories to the people in leadership that I think could end up, their name be replaced.
Sure.
That when they come, there's going to be a target.
Right.
I've looked around, and this would be me talking to the department head or whatever. When they come, when they find this, a lot of people know about it. You just explained, Richard. Typically, there's a lot of people. I would say, purchasing knows this. These guys know. One of these days, somebody's going to share it with the wrong person. And by the way, some people are whistleblowing and getting hefty payments for turning folks in. I'm concerned that the target might be you. I need to share with you these stories of other people that went before you. And I need to try and convince you to help me because you have the strength and power and decision-making ability to get this fixed. Part of my job is to put you in a bulletproof vest. You are standing out naked in the field right now, and I can't have that. I need to convince you somehow that despite the benefit of doing this, it has to be changed. Maybe we should go back and change the policy that apparently might be connected to bonuses or something, to help prevent from motivating people to do this. I don't know. But I would do all those sorts of things. I could go on for some time. There's many different ways to approach it. Very honest, one-on-one, private conversations, data and facts and evidence of people who went before them, maybe to jail or certainly fined or fired, and say these things. Now, sometimes people paint scenarios like you just did, Richard, where I've tried all that, or I just know these people aren't going to listen. I would give it everything I got. I would do everything I just said. I would try it every which way as calmly and with as high emotional IQ as I could. And then I would say to them, here's what's going to happen. As you know, I've spent a lot of time on this with you. It hasn't worked.
Right.
I can't walk out of here with no as an answer, and you're stuck with your position. I need to go up the channel here, and I'm going to explain to them exactly what I've explained to you, and then I'm going to talk to them about the damage it's going to cause to them potentially or their organization's reputation. I want you to come with me because I want you to explain to them your side of the deal.
Oh, nice.
And then just keep going up the chain. And if the scenario is painted like this, sorry for going a little long here, Richard, but
it's a critical issue. I think.
People say, "Well, that won't work." Then when I tried that, I tried this, I tried this, I tried this. I say, "Okay, here's the last couple of steps." You go to their leadership and you say, "Here's the position you're in. This person hopefully sitting right next to me, is what they're going to explain their side. I'm going to explain my side. I'm going to explain what's going to happen to you and the organization. And then if they don't do it, I'll say I have to keep going up.
Yeah.
And eventually, the last group is the audit committee of the board.
Yeah.
And if they won't help me, again, I don't bring that up until I've exhausted everything else. Then I'm going to make and I would tell the audit committee of the board, if you don't help me, I can't stay here. I'm going to make a noisy exit. Yeah. Here's the letter I'm going to send the entire board, and then I'm walking out the front door. You never want to play that card. You want to exhaust every other option, but sometimes the only answer is you've got to kind of pull out a baseball bat and say, I ain't leaving until this is thoroughly discussed, and when I leave, I'm going to make a lot of noise.
Well, to break it down, I think the first thing that you addressed is you're putting a stake in the ground saying, this isn't a business decision. I know that you think it is. This is a risk decision, and let's not mask our language here.
Yeah.
This is a control and an accounting violation. So let's call it what it is, right? You are, whether it's material or not, that's not what we're talking about now. We're misstating revenue because we're shipping something to a client that doesn't need it. So let's first call it what it is and then understand what the consequences are.
I'm really glad you shared that. It's very clear to speak in firm, no BS terms.
Right.
Don't pretend. Don't couch it in their terms they're using where they'll use some cute little name for it.
Euphemism, yeah.
And one other thing you reminded me of that I always used to do is I would break it down as simply as possible, and inarguably I would not let them get me caught up in some esoteric discussion. I would show them the sentence in the accounting rules or whatever, the government regulation, the sentence that says you can't. And I would hand them the document. And again, this is the very first person, not running up the chain right away, desperately trying to work it out with the people in the trenches, and show them, here's the report from accounting that shows we are doing this. Okay? And if you try and slide off into some euphemistic description of this whole thing again, I'm going to repeat this sentence and point at this line item on this report. You're not going to be able to do to me what you've done to others. And again, I don't want to make it sound too nasty. My whole way up, I'm trying to be civil.
Yeah. I think this is about the compliance leader putting themselves in a bulletproof vest while at the same time trying to put the rest of the organization in one.
I think most compliance officers can demonstrate months and months of, if not years, of drawers full of effort, and this book I hope helps them with some tricks with regard to getting through the
thanks, Roy.
Tough stuff.
Well, this was making the difficult the discussable. I appreciate it and look forward to the next part of our interview.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.